Hey all, so Summer of Pain Week 3. It's late enough in the day now that you've probably heard this one is causing some people a little bit more trouble than the last two. It is still definitely soloable. If you have a ranked Immortal Abomination, then congratulations, because he definitely seems to be the best combination of efficiency and ease of play. Although I don't think that the solo for this guy is easy no matter who you have. Um, Technically, you can do this with pretty much anyone who applies poison. It's just going to be different levels of difficult, right? I mean, technically, you can do it with anybody who stays alive long enough because he does take damage without poison, just not very much. Now, with all that said, my Immortal Abomination is not ranked at all. I have a Dr. Voodoo, who I think has been a pretty good option for a lot of people for this, but he was in a queue with when this started, and I didn't really mess around with him much. I do have Clairvoyant, who seems to be a pretty good option for a lot of people, but I use her all the time, and I don't get many opportunities to dust off my rank 3 Sig 100 Mysterio. And what better time than this? So, with that in mind, let's go over the nodes that make this difficult. First off, the biggest one is Acid Wash. So poison debuffs and passives do more damage, but he takes 90% less if you don't have one up on him, which is of course problematic because Mysterio himself is poison immune unless you remove his helmet, which can only be done by knocking him down with a Spider-Verse, I think specifically Spider-Verse Hero, or by armor breaking him. And since none of the Spider-Verse heroes are poison immune, I'm sure we probably will see some of them. Like, this is probably possible with a couple of those. But you would have to play perfectly, and if he waits you out, then this other node, Toxic Behavior, is going to be a problem, where after a while, he's just going to put a poison on you, and he has 18,000 attack, so you're probably just going to die unless you're outright immune. Or if, like iBomb or Diablo after his buff, you take no damage. Now, the good thing is that they put this node on here, Attacker Special Burst Lockdown, where every time you throw a special, it puts a pretty nice armor break on him, 15 seconds, and that is long enough that it will remove his helmet and his poison immunity, and it will keep it off for one full cycle. So it will try to come back once, and then it will fail, and the timer will come back around again. So you actually have a bit longer than 15 seconds to make this work. Matador, however, means that the only way for you to gain power and to take advantage of that node is for him to gain power and throw specials, which means you're not going to be able to power lock him or anything like that. You are just going to have to deal with it. That's a little tricky because Mysterio's specials are themselves kind of difficult, and he becomes harder to fight in specific ways after all of them. We also have this Nanoplague node, which means that even if you wanted to go that route and just play the long way with like OG Vision, when that poison debuff eventually tried to trigger because he wasn't using specials, you would just die to shock damage. It's not really going to help either. And then enhanced visibility makes the whole thing faster. I'm not it doesn't always make it harder because you need for him to gain power, for you to gain power, for you to win. So him gaining more power isn't always a problem, but it definitely makes it easy to get backed up that he's gaining extra power while his helmet's up. So with Mysterio specifically, what I found was most efficient for trying to get the solo was to bait out his special one and hit into him even while he has the reflection gas up. Because since you're only doing 10% of your normal damage, he's only going to reflect 10% of the normal damage, which makes it just a few hundred after a full combo. And the reason that that's worth it is that Mysterio has block penetration and 18,000 attack. And so even a parry with my rank 3 6-star is costing me over 800. So if hitting him to keep me away from the wall costs 500 health, and parrying him to buy me time to wait out the reflection gas costs 800 health, then it's better to hit him. And of course, if you do get backed up against the wall and you are not able to land a parry, then you're just going to start losing huge chunks off your life. If you block a full combo from him, with most characters, you are going to lose double-digit percentages of your overall health pool. So with that in mind, we build to the L3. We do not throw our earlier specials because in my experience, my quick testing of this, trying to land a poison without the big damage boost he gets from the frenzy gas that only comes from the L3 didn't do enough block damage to be worth how much you take parrying to get those reliable heavy openings. And so I didn't think that way was working. Like, yeah, we do damage, but it cost us more of our health as a percentage than it was taking off of his. So we build to the L3, and we're going to wait as long as possible to throw the L3 so that we can try and be close to forming another gas when we come out of it. Now this only matters because my Mysterio is awakened in fairly high sig, so he creates his own chemical gas passives. And he creates them fairly quickly. And if one just comes around on its own, then that's one less medium-medium combo I have to try and weave in to build those gas passives. Because we could just heavy with the frenzy gas up, and it would do a decent amount of poison, but it probably wouldn't be worth what it took us to get all the way to the L3. Whereas if you have even 2 of those gas passives up, then the poison is pretty respectable. It was ticking for over 3,000 for me. If I can get 3 of them, then it's over 5,000 a tick, and that really helps, but that may cost you in other ways because to get that many gas passives, I needed to push him over a bar of power, even if I threw the L3 when he had nothing. And that meant that he was probably going to throw the L1, get his reflection gas up, and while he's poisoned, you will feel that full reflected damage. So I found it better to avoid that. With that, let's go ahead and get into the gameplay, and anything else that comes up, we'll talk about as we go. So that right there might look risky, but there is no reason not to be aggressive and fancy to get your first opening, because this quest doesn't cost any energy, and I knew that was safe because I've restarted this fight more times than I'm proud of. But basically, I think it's better to do something like that. Find a quick opening that doesn't get you backed up and doesn't require you to parry, because that 800 health may come in handy later. So we waited out the reflection gas there, and then I dodged 2 hits at the wall because that's kind of the upper limit of what I know I can safely dodge every time, and it bought me a fraction of a second more towards my next gas. We can throw the L3 if we absolutely have to before the reflection gas expires, because he still won't have a poison up, and so it's still only 10% damage. But I found that even 10% of Mysterio's L3 with his frenzy gas is not necessarily damage that you want to eat if you can avoid it. So you saw that was just 1 poison, and we took off a pretty good chunk. The other thing that we're going to try and do is, because, again, our Mysterio has block penetration as well, if we can safely hit into his block while he is poisoned, then that's really going to add up. Now notice there, I went ahead and parried those because, like I said earlier, I'm not comfortable dodging his full combo at the wall. If I try that, I'm just going to end up getting hit, or at best blocking some hits that I don't want to without being able to parry them. And each one of those is going to be, 1,500, 2,500, depending on if it's a light or a medium. And that's a lot of health. Whereas if I parry, back up, wait for another parry, then that's only 800 each time, and I can make this work. That's acceptable losses. This is very much a fight where you have to budget your health, because in my testing, I very quickly figured out I was not going to finish this above 50%. So it becomes a matter of spending your health to do damage. Every time I take damage, I want it to serve a purpose. I want it to be because I'm parrying. I want it to be because I kept him away from my wall by hitting into him, and then he reflected that. Something like that. Now, there are a few places in here where my L1 evade is not perfect, and that just happens. I definitely could have played this better, but I find completely evading his L1 a little difficult, so I let myself go on that because this is still a solo. So notice on that last one, you can heavy counter his L1 if you just wait for him to come up out of the ground. So that is an alternate way of landing the poison if you are not able to get a parry to do it, or if he just throws his L1 as you're going for it. As you saw, it also reflected about 800 damage. It can do more if you crit on the heavy, which is why I still think trying to go for the parry heavy is safer long term. But if the alternative is his helmet comes back and he purifies the poison and I lose out on all that damage I built up to the L3 for, then it's much better to risk the crit and just go for the poison after he throws his L1. And that first time it didn't even crit, so no big deal. We can also hit into him even while his helmet is gone, as long as he doesn't have a poison on him, then he's not storing too much damage with the reflection gas. He'll store more if we have our frenzy gas up, because we'll do more damage, but it's still manageable. And if it helps keep him on his side of the field and helps keep the tempo up to build us up to our next L3, it's worth it. You can see this strategy is working because he has less health than we do as a percentage. Now, I will say you could be significantly more aggressive with this. You could make a point to get to 3 gas every single time and then try and land a second poison before the frenzy wears off and just do a ton of damage that way. But the reason I'm not doing that is because I found that doing that required more parries, required getting backed up, required me taking stupid risks, or required me pushing him to his L2, which gives us a bit of willpower healing from the power drain, but will drain us pretty much to 0, and therefore we have to start over our whole thing from the very beginning, and if we don't have him on his side of the field when that illusion gas expires, we're probably in trouble. And it's difficult to keep him on his side of the field with the illusion gas up because you can miss. And Mysterio has no way of countering miss. So I just felt it better to avoid that, lock in the guaranteed damage of 2 chemical gas, letting that poison run its course, hitting into him if I could, and not worrying about going for big numbers as long as we were trending downward and our health was better off than his. Which, as you can see, before I accidentally blocked the first beam there, like I said, my L1 evade is not always perfect. Before that, I had almost twice as much health as he did. So it was going pretty well. Like I said, we're going for parries when we're against the wall. I can dodge his heavy at the wall. I can dodge a couple hits of his combo. But we're going for the parries because 800 and then a couple seconds of him not being able to do anything at all is much better than the alternative of accidentally blocking a full combo at the wall. So see how he hit into his block there, and it's doing almost as much as the poison per tick on a medium and about half as much on a light. So that's pretty significant, and whenever he gives us reliable openings, we're going to take him. Still going pretty well. Actually have more than double his health right now, But notice we're getting backed up a little bit. Because of that right there, I wasn't sure I could get the parry, and that meant that I might lose, 10, 12,000 blocking a full combo. Better to throw the L3 even with the reflection gas up, and you'll see how much we take to pay for it. Now, of course, I crit on that medium. 4,000 is not pleasant to take because of something you did, but if the alternative is 10,000 in block damage, I'll take those red numbers every time. Also went for that parry rather than, backing off and waiting for another opening, just because I know that even though my health is going down, kind of dangerously so, I'm still winning. I can afford to spend a little bit of it to keep in the rhythm I want, even if it means the fight isn't going completely perfectly. I'll also point out Mysterio has 40,000 health, so 21% here is about 8,000. So I could afford to throw one more L3 into the reflection gas if I needed to, but I was pretty sure I did not need to, and I just needed to land one more. Notice I'm backing up, waiting for my free gas from the Sig to come back. I heavy counter, and I know that that should do it, so I'm just backing off and waiting for the poison to do it, and we're done. Only 17% health left, but a solo is a solo. So just some closing words here. If you have Immortal Abomination, use him. If you are more comfortable with Claire, especially if your Claire is ranked up higher than a Mysterio that you have, use her. Voodoo's probably more efficient as well, but this is who I had and who I wanted to use, and he worked pretty well. I think this also goes to show that, like I said at the beginning, anyone with poison can do this fight. So if you're seeing a bunch of solos with a few niche champions and you have a poison option but it isn't one of those, and you're going, well, that just means it's impossible. No, it means it's harder. Just set aside some time, do the fight, and maybe you won't get the solo, but with the rewards on offer here, it is still worth it, in my opinion, to go through this fight and get him down, even if it requires using a couple revives and some potions with a substandard option, because then you can just use some time to farm those back up. Anyway, good luck to everyone who hasn't beaten this yet. Congrats if you have gotten him down. Let me know in the comments how this went for you, and take care, everyone.